everyone. This is Michael Olson, Director of Development for StandUp for Kids Orange County and the host of ListenUp, the StandUp for Kids podcast. On today's episode, we'll be speaking with Victoria Torres. She works for the Samueli Foundation and she's the Director of Community Impact. So we're going to talk to her about her job, about Samueli Foundation and the role of philanthropy in the greater environment of government and helping people. So welcome, Victoria.
Hi, yeah, thank you for having me. Excited.
All right. So just tell people a little bit about yourself and your role within Samueli.
Sure, yeah. So I'm Director of Community Impact with a special emphasis in Anaheim, the city of Anaheim, which is also home to the Ducks. I work for the family foundation of all the entities that the Samuelis, have created or oversee. So I work specifically with the family for about a year and a half now, almost 2 years. It'll be 2 years in May of this year. That's when I got hired. And my specific role is, as in relation to Anaheim, is really boots on the ground type work, capacity building, working with nonprofits, whether there are grantees or not, meaning they've received funding from us, or we like to actually consider capacity building and the work that we do with them considered also like a grant because it's our time and expertise. And this really started because the family is embarking on a large project in Anaheim. Aside from owning the Ducks and managing the Honda Center, they want to bring a entertainment district to the surrounding area called OC Vibe. And it's public. There's a website called ocvibe.com. Anyone can go there and check out what's coming. And so because they're so philanthropic, they're also actually signers of the Giving Pledge, which was started by Warren Buffett and Bill Gates. And so everything they do, there's always an intention, a philanthropic mindset and intention. So part of that was hiring somebody to be in the community and learning. So a lot of my work in the past year and a half has been a lot of discovery, learning about Anaheim, even though I was born and raised there. So I grew up in Anaheim. So it's a real treat to serve my hometown. And I've been in nonprofit sector for over 15 years now. So I get to continue to serve the nonprofit community as it relates to how they serve the community. And so I'm very much, I work a lot with grassroots organizations and helping them and learning from them, like what's going on in the city, and also work with the city. So I have all the stakeholders, any stakeholder that affects the Anaheim community, I want to know about and learn about.
Cool. So you touched on a lot of different things, and I think over the course of our talk, I think we're going to dive into all of them.
Yes.
I want to talk about you first.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned 15 years of experience. So, and you're in a unique, interesting role now. So,
Yeah.
how'd you get there?
Uh, such a it's long and it's crazy, but it is a dream come true type story. So I've always been around nonprofit. So since high school, I've volunteered. I actually, founded a club in high school. And then in college, my background is human services. So I have a degree in human services and then a master's in counseling. So I always knew I was going to be in the helping profession. I always knew I wanted to be in the community. And through that, learned about nonprofit work and how nonprofits work from an organizational and administrative standpoint, not so much just the case management and serving the community, but I really, through my time in all the organizations that I worked with, the most recent one prior to Samueli was 10C, and they were very much a capacity builder. They're considered a nonprofit for nonprofits. I really started to get behind the scenes type learning of, man, nonprofits are doing so much with very little, from funding to resources, uh, to even, being able to collaborate effectively and know who their partners are and how to work with them. So my my before coming into the philanthropic side, or the other side of the rainbow, as I often call it, I was doing the work. I worked with clients, I did programming, and then I dabbled in the fundraising as I worked closely with my development team to raise the money to do the programming that I wanted. So I've been on federal grants, I've helped write small grants. Like very early on in my career, I really started to see that good, effective organizations, it's not just about serving the community well, it's also having a good foundational business structure. Nonprofits are businesses. In fact, they do everything a for-profit has to do legally and from a paperwork standpoint. Um, and then one extra step. Nonprofits actually have an extra step. They have to do the 1023. So it's harder, in my opinion, to become a nonprofit. And then there's a lot of stigmas and misunderstandings. So that's how my love for this work, I'm more of a behind the scenes type person now, not so much um, delivering services. I'm more about helping nonprofits be more effective in how they deliver services. So I did a lot of that at 1OC. I was the director of training and organizational development. So I coordinated and helped with putting on our training schedule and making decisions around what do our nonprofits need from a training standpoint, and then also organizational development wise, consulting around board development, fundraising, strategic planning, all those things that we nonprofits don't often line item, right? It's very rare that we put in budget, we put in the budget training and professional development, and we try and get all of that pro bono. So I was in the position of trying to find ways to raise the money to offer it at no cost or at a small amount of cost. So now uh, I'm really in a position where I still get to do that, but I don't. But I don't have to charge because I work for a family that is really paying me to do that. I mean, that's my role. I get to work with organizations like yourself, which we'll talk about how we've worked together in the past, and provide that um, behind the scenes support. I do board retreats, I do strategic planning, I do coaching. I coach a lot of operations directors and EDs and founders, and in doing that and learning, I'm able to be a better connector for the community. So not just a you know writing of a check type funder. I'm also giving my time and talent.
Yeah, so you're I guess I would say you're perfectly suited to in the role that you have because you have all of this wealth of past experience that is really
Yeah.
informing, making you very knowledgeable about the current role and and so just to kind of like maybe paint the picture a little bit for the audience. So
Hmm.
Stand Up for Kids is a nonprofit who takes in
Hmm.
money to then provide services to the population, and in our case to
Right.
help end the cycle of youth homelessness, which is our mission. And an
Hmm.
organization like the Samueli Foundation could be a funder for
Hmm.
organizations like ours to help us
True.
do our work. So
Correct.
so in some regards we are on the provider side of the fence and you're on the funder side of the fence,
Hmm.
um, from the philanthropic nonprofit side of things. But then
Yeah.
it sounds like you get to do a little bit of the, uh, it's not the services directly, but it's the consulting and this kind of the not just getting a check, but being
Right.
direct partners with some of these providers.
Very much. Yeah. And so we kind of have my interim ED, she once said, and I thought it spelled it out perfectly. She shared with a group of people. She said, at Samueli, when we do give you money, we don't just give money, we also give ourselves. And so everyone should know that when you get funding from the Samueli Foundation, you're also getting us. I mean, we want to be a part of the process. We want to help. We want to provide resources. We want to leverage what we have to um, make your dollar go even further. So the example is that you guys have benefited from is our shared space concept in Anaheim, because the family owns the Ducks and manages the Honda Center. We have a lot of space in that surrounding area, and so one of the spaces was not being utilized. And when I came on board, I needed an office, and our home office is not in Anaheim. Uh, so they said, well, Victoria should be in Anaheim. So where can we put her? And in assessing our space, we realized we actually had um, some big space that we could not just provide for myself, but also other nonprofits. Why not open it up? And it's vacant right now. We can afford to offer it up at no cost. So we then partnered with the local community foundation, the Anaheim Community Foundation, who is a right now very much important to our planning and our uh, mission of growing philanthropic culture. So we want to grow the philanthropic culture within Anaheim, so that people don't just think that it's just the Samuelis giving, but there are others that can give too. So Anaheim Community Foundation partnered with them. They also needed some space, and we created the Hive. So the Hive, where nonprofits thrive, is a very much like a WeWorks concept. It's got private space, drop-in space, kitchen, conference rooms, the perfect just drop-in space for nonprofits that have been going to Starbucks, between meeting their clients, or the small nonprofit that, like you guys, that they have a main admin office in another city, but a lot of their work is also done in Anaheim, and their staff need a place to just go to um, and have a place to do case notes or meet, or just not be in their car, right? Waiting for the next place to go. And it's been very, very helpful to those nonprofits in Anaheim serving the clients. And so that's just one example how it's not a monetary give, but it's definitely a huge resource and cost savings on the nonprofit to not have to pay for that.
And then as far as Samueli's impact for Stand Up for Kids, you did come
Mhm.
and lead a board
I
meeting
did, yes.
on strategic planning, and you helped us
Uh-huh.
activate our team and figure out what we're
Yeah.
going to do and how we're going to work. So we're sincerely appreciative of that component. And then,
Yeah.
like you said too, the Hive and having access at the Hive, which,
Mhm.
cross our fingers, COVID will
I
relent
know.
at some point, and we'll be able to go hang out there, do
I
work
know.
there.
I miss the Hive. And this all happened. Um, my normal routine. I'm very much a people person. I get energy from people. And my routine was, I get to work, I get my coffee, and then I would just walk around the office and say good morning and check in, and what are you working on today, and how can I be of help? And yeah, when the pandemic hit, it was just ripped, from under me. Um, because that's how we grow and that's how we learn, especially small nonprofits. We got to lean on each other.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Okay, so I want to change gears a little bit and talk
Hmm.
about the Samueli Foundation. Um,
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about like the origin story and
Hmm.
what the mission vision is for Samueli.
Yeah, sure. So the Samueli Foundation is the private foundation of the family, so Henry and Susan. And really started. Henry is the founder of Broadcom, co-founder of Broadcom, and um, then Susan. So Broadcom has their foundation and they do their work as it relates to Broadcom. And then they purchase the Ducks, and Ducks has their foundation and as it relates to the Ducks. So Samueli Foundation is really personal to the family. And it was really Susan who wanted to start doing work in health. She's very holistic, very much into whole person and integrative health. So really it started with that and her desire to grow in that area, and that sparked work in the health field, which we're still participating in. And it also sparked this the philosophy of how the Samuelis work with their giving model or their giving modality. It's very systemic. So with integrative health, it wasn't just about granting out money to organizations that wanted to dabble in integrative health. What they learned is integrative health was very new. I mean, and then I'm talking, this was like over 10, maybe 15 years ago. So they decided, well, let's put money into the research to help integrative health initiatives. So what now, if of integrative health, didn't just happen overnight. It was years of work, and that work was spearheaded and invested in by the family. So they searched out a doctor, Dr. Wayne Jonas, that is based in the East Coast, who was already leading the field, or leading a leader in this area. And they really invested in him and his work and said, what do you need to get the research, to do the studies, to do whatever you needed to do to make integrative health something worth talking about? Because in the medical field, nothing is valid unless there's research to back it. So that was the start of the work, and all of our projects have kind of taken on that same feeling of, okay, what's the problem? And we're not a grant maker. If you go to our website, you're not going to see an open call for proposals. You're not going to see a submission process. We very much are project based as it relates to the family interest, and really in it for the long haul, depending on what is chosen. So we've done work in integrative health. We've done work in STEM. So that's, Henry coming from Broadcom, wanting to make an impact in engineering and the STEM field. So we founded and first investor in the STEM ecosystem model, which is national. And when you create things on a national standpoint, the hope is that it reaches all these smaller ecosystems. And eventually it grows up into a sustainable entity, so that one day we can then move on to another project with our investment dollars. And so that's how we look at giving and philanthropy. What's the problem? Who are the big players? Who can we get around the table to figure out the answer? And then what's the plan for growing it and making it sustainable? Because it eventually just evolves into building itself into a system.
Yeah, so I mean, an analogy would be you've got a seed of an idea, and you guys are the waterer and fertilizer of the idea, and
Yeah,
get it started, and it starts growing, and then over time you need less fertilizer and
yeah,
natural growth.
totally. I love that analogy. Yeah.
And it's never
No, it's a great
natural.
analogy.
It's never natural because it always takes somebody somewhere who's taking on the
Mhm.
initiative to actually make a move. Um,
Oh yeah.
but
And it still needs people,
yeah,
right? It still needs someone to check in, right, on the plant, check in, make sure everything's going okay. And that's us, but that's also other stakeholders too. We what I actually love, which is very unique about the foundation, both from a foundation and just any nonprofit entity, is we don't want to really own anything. Um, we're okay if the name's not on it. In fact, Henry and Susan would prefer that their name is not on it. um, they they just want to make an impact, and they want it to live and grow and thrive on its own, because then it shows that it truly is a community need and a community mission. If it's just something that they believe in, then they're the ones that are going to have to keep it going, right? But if you think about true community projects and efforts, if it really does, if it really is a need, other people will join in. Like, other people will say, I want to be a part of this. This makes sense. And it'll sustain because of that, because of other people's passions, not just because of the funder that decided that this was important. Um, so yeah, so most recently, we in the last couple years we have been spending a lot of time in esports, and so we created NASEF, National National Association, Sports Esports Federation, Scholastic Esports Federation. I always fumble it up, but yeah, that came out of because our work with hockey. The NHL asked us, like, what do you think about esports, and what could your foundation potentially, or actually just in general, like just the Ducks, but because of how much work it was going to take, it became a foundation project. And it was really just a pilot of how could we make, because it's also STEM related, gaming, the gaming industry. And we adopted our STEM model, this whole ecosystem approach of, it's not just about the game, it's also about social emotional learning. This is how kids play now. This is the future. This is STEM. And there's the player, but there's also this ecosystem around the player, around content development and character development and the gaming piece. And then in the game, there's these competitions, and in the competitions, there's broadcasting, right? There's so much more than just the player, and and appealing to a student's interest, right? So we go to school. I grew up playing sports, and so for me, my driver was, I'm going to school, get good grades because I want to be on the team and I want to keep playing. Every kid needs their their thing. Every kid needs their interest, and gaming is becoming more and more popular. So we took that angle of how can we really use this um, in the education system. So it started off with just what is gaming and how do we get kids involved, and then how do we use this to appeal to their social emotional learning, to help academics. How do we integrate it into curriculum? So now there are teachers that we've partnered with in the school system to create English language curriculum around gaming, and we're piloting that at the Samueli Academy in Santa Ana. So merging all these projects, leveraging them, but keeping in mind, who's the recipient, and in this case, it's the kid that's really into games, or the gaming world. So that project is reached its kind of height of it's really moving and growing. It's become national and also international. We've got some other countries that are participating in the program, and so we've helped it kind of move out on its own.
Okay, so you've described a few STEM, integrative health, and esports. You've got the OC vibe
Hmm.
thing happening that
Hmm.
we want to talk a little bit more about here. But
Yeah.
what's the tying theme, or what's the vision or the mission that's driving? Because those to me those are kind of all across the board
Yeah.
a little bit. So what
Yeah.
connects all of that?
So our high level pillars are youth, education, health, and culture. And they're very broad, but with the mindset of, you got to invest in youth. Youth are the future. And if you keep people educated and healthy, then that's a good starting block, right? Especially health. And then culture, and culture is all how the community defines it. And so I think that's really why in those three examples you see such a breadth of interest, because um, health takes on its own culture, youth have their own culture, um, and so we really want to go with what is going on in that community, and answer, how can we help them and what they want. So we don't create, we don't have pillars like homelessness, and we don't have impact areas, because with a family foundation, like most, it is very personal, and it is very project based. So it is hard. I'm not gonna lie, it is hard to follow like our um, for a nonprofit. It's hard to distinguish, like, do we fit? Do we not fit? And my answer is always, I really can't tell you right now, because it just depends on our project. It depends on where we're going with this particular project. There's no connection demographically, or there's no connection impact wise. It really is based on the family's interest.
Yeah, and so that's actually a good segue into where I want to go next, and that's kind of the marrying or the connections between philanthropy,
Mhm.
government, corporate,
Hmm.
etc. Uh,
Yeah.
so in the Samuel, let me kind of like paint the picture, and then you tell me if I'm inaccurate in any of these places. They determine XYZ needs to happen, because there is something not happening, or there is a new thing. They want to improve society, or improve
Mhm.
the the way people live, uh,
Yeah.
and so they find projects that match their mission, and then
Mhm.
they go and approach whoever's involved in those areas and try to do just that and provide their
Yeah.
financial backing towards that.
Right.
And that could be something in the public sector within government's realm, or
Mhm.
it could be in the private sector, in the corporate world, where they want to come alongside another company, and it's up to them
Mhm.
as to where they want to go and how they want to do it. Correct.
Yeah. Yep.
um so it's just interesting, and if you don't really understand philanthropy, which I
Yeah.
didn't and probably still don't completely, um
Yeah.
it's a little bit of a soup, where I kind of think of like let's say education. We've
Mhm.
got the public system, we've got the Department of Education, and we've got a federal system, a state system, local school districts, et cetera, et cetera. So if
Mhm.
there is improvements to be made or adjustments to be made, there's already a thing there that is
Yeah.
tasked with doing that. So help me understand, like, how does philanthropy kind of marry with the existing public systems?
Yeah, it's a good question, and this would be more, my philosophy too, on just how I, as a program officer, or, director of the foundation, um, how I know, learning more now, being on this side, how that is happening. Like, these projects that I just shared with you, knew nothing of that depth prior. I'd heard of STEM, right? STEM ecosystems, or OC STEM. I'd heard of esports, but until you're in it and at meetings and really like asking, like, well, who's that and who's that and who's that, you don't realize the depth of work going on behind the scenes to create these entities, but then also to deliver the work. And so I think what happens is sometimes it does start off with a request from the school district, right? Maybe it is the school district that says, we need help in STEM, or we need help in something, and every school district does have their own foundation. So school districts have foundations that go out and approach individuals or their sometimes it's just the PTA. And through that, I think people learn about the needs in the school system, and sometimes it's philanthropists that answer those needs. But it's still up to
question just about that. So that would be odd to me that I'm a school district, I need something. Isn't the taxpayer gonna provide that?
So I think schools are always, searching for other ways to enhance the classroom and enhance the student's experience. Now, maybe all the teachers could have gotten together and said, let's just figure out what everybody needs and go get a grant or go to whoever and get all of our needs met with one ask. But instead, for this particular purpose, they chose to do it that way. So yes, I mean, we would hope that our education system could cover everything, but that's obviously not the case.
Yeah. So what that, I mean, that's discouraging on some level. We can always look at the bright side and the less bright side. Because I would, if I'm a teacher, I want to be 100% focused on my kids, and I want to maximize their education while they're in the classroom, and I want to try to be as undistracted as possible. So to have to go try to figure out a grant or pull out your checkbook to be effective or to be more effective is kind of a bummer. But that, I mean, that comes from our federal and state governments and public policy and the way money is divvied through the taxpayers.
There's only so much that I think government can cover through tax dollars, and so that's where if philanthropy can help offset that, then that's where philanthropy comes into play, not just from individuals, but also from corporations. And corporations, obviously, they will tell you what they give to and why, because they have more of a cause related marketing approach of, if our business is technology, then we want to give to technology. If our business is apparel, then how can we, make a match there? So corporations do have more of a strategy around their giving and volunteering programs, whereas family foundations or private individual foundations, it really is to their discretion and how they create their entity, or how they define their goals and mission of where they want to give, and and who's on their board. And a lot of times the people on the board are family members.
But yeah, so I think back to what I was saying, what I was talking about, I think is probably just a little too simplistic. That, hey, we've got a government's gonna take care of it and open and shut. In reality, even if government's doing great on a lot of things, they're not doing as great on other things. That is true of nonprofits and businesses and everything else. So even if and though government's doing a great job in different angles, there's always opportunities, and there's always a need and a partnership component from the philanthropic area to give them a nudge and be partner and kind of work together on things.
Yeah, and I think an example I can give you of how we're kind of doing that in Anaheim is, part of my work early on, I said, was just discovery, learning. And in order to do that, I'm not just going to learn from nonprofits, but I'm going to learn from people in the city. So I reached out to some city workers. I have a colleague that keeps tabs of the political landscape. And so I was just learning from everyone, other funders, funders that give in the city, and who do you give to and why, and what's your objective, through that. So when I worked with the city, I worked or leaned on the community services department, those who run the community centers, the youth centers, the human service collaborative, the homeless collaborative. Just what are you hearing? Because they're the ones that are also, meeting the community in these spaces. And so what we came up with, I had an opportunity to do a little bit of grant funding through. We did our grant process through the Anaheim Community Foundation, because again, we want to lift up the local community foundation and build their brand, so that people see that we trust, we trust them to lead our efforts, and so you should too. And so we came up with this community hub model, because what I learned from Anaheim, which I think is amazing, is that the city actually pays for a human services type culture, there's a human service type culture that exists within the city, and they have case managers. They have people in the community centers that are very mindful of the needs of the community, and they will support monetarily. They build it into their budget to have some of these people on site. And the city is very open to nonprofits coming in and utilizing these spaces, as long as the services are free to the community members. So we leverage that. So we selected 7 community hubs, we call them, throughout the city, and we put out a LOI, a letter of intent, for nonprofits to submit to provide services at those sites, because each site was already deemed a high need area by the city. Otherwise, they wouldn't have put resources there. Some of these sites, or community hubs, were actually built because of the demographics in that area. Like the city was very strategic in where they placed family resource centers, where they placed community centers, libraries. And so I just thought, well, let's just leverage that. Why, if we really want to have true city impact, let's lean on what the city has learned through their data and their and these sites that they already have manpower. And then we'll ask them what else is needed, and then we'll provide funds to the nonprofits to come in and deliver those services. So that's the three working together. You've got the funder, the city, which you could argue is also government, because they're paid through tax dollars, and then the nonprofits helping to fill the gap.
Yeah, I think yeah, so it's a soup. It's a
Hmm.
it's a partnership, and anything that
Definitely.
on these, the city of Anaheim's a huge city. So there's a
Hmm.
lot of needs, there's a lot of competing um a lot of initiatives that are competing on some level for attention,
Yeah.
and it's complicated. Um and
Yes.
and so you saw something that was already going well, and to know that
Hmm.
that was happening requires research and understanding, and digging your toes in, or digging your feet in, and
Yeah.
attending meetings and learning, and not being, hey, I'm the Samueli Foundation, I'm gonna ride
Yeah.
in and like everything is all wrong, we're gonna fix everything
Right.
for
No.
you, like that. It almost never works, right? So
Right.
so,
Yeah.
so just cutting it, being the white knight idea is not a likely one that's gonna to win. So it takes work, I guess, is the
It
summary.
does.
uh
It does. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of energy, patience, um, and also um, what's the word? Trust. It takes a lot of trust because, you know, I feel fortunate that I came into this position with some trust, having worked at 1OC and built relationships with nonprofits through the 5 years I spent there. So I feel really fortunate that I went into this position. People already knew me on the nonprofit side. So when I called them up and said, "Hey, I'm with the Samueli Foundation now. I want to learn about what you're doing in Anaheim." I mean, obviously aside from the fact that I'm a funder and most people say yes to meetings with funders, um, I felt like when people sat with me, it truly was not about the potential for funding. It really was like, "Yeah, come yeah, Victoria, like, good to hear from you. I would love to learn what you're doing, and yeah, happy to tell you what we're doing in Anaheim." And so it does take that trust on both sides, and transparency. Transparency of, me coming in saying, "Look, I'm not promising anything. I'm just here to learn." But then also transparency on the other end to be honest with the positives, the goods and the bads of the work that you're doing as an organization, the struggles and the successes, not just the rainbows and unicorns.
Yeah. So I guess let's talk just briefly again about OC Vibe. And I'm gonna once again
Sure.
I want to give you my summary, and then you tell me where I'm inaccurate. Uh,
Okay.
so the Samuelis own the Ducks. The Ducks own the
Mhm.
Honda Center. Um, they
Manage. We manage the Honda Center.
manage.
Yeah.
And
The
they
Honda Center is owned by the city still. We
okay.
we are just we own the management company. Yeah.
Okay. And there's an initiative called OC Vibe
Mhm.
where they want
Yeah.
to increase the vibe of Anaheim, and
Yep.
make large scale investments to
Mhm.
bring more arts, bring entertainment, bring a reason to come to Anaheim, or give some pizzazz. Uh, bring
Mhm.
I'm kind of butchering it now, but and the other the other part of that though, which is where you come into
Yeah.
play, is that hey, we're going to bring some more economic vibrancy to the city, and alongside
Right.
of that we want to make sure that the community, the city of Anaheim as a whole and its population, is also levered up with that
Mhm.
initiative. Is that the fair way
Yeah.
to say it?
Yeah, no, I think it's great. Yeah, like I said, when they look at investing in anything, they wanna always see what they want, the philanthropic lens to go work with it, right? Not be an afterthought. And so I'm here to keep an eye out for opportunities, of how what we can do philanthropically as OC Vibe makes its debut. And so for a while, so I joined the team before it was launched, before the idea was launched, but now it's launched. And like I said, you can go to ocvibe.com to see what's coming. And my role is to just keep a lookout for opportunities in the meantime, long term. Again, going back to that systemic project based type approach. It's not just granting and seeing where it goes. I mean, we'll do that through the community hub model, but again, it still has very much an Anaheim focus. Um, but with what's coming, obviously, jobs, entertainment, that culture. So I'm still formulating what the impact areas are and what that will be philanthropically, but already you could assume that okay, there's workforce development is going to be a huge need. Arts and entertainment, transportation, more things going on at the Honda Center. There's, I think, when you look at the land or look at the uh, um, rendering that's on the website, you'll see there's housing. There's going to be some housing as part of the project. So as I'm learning more, um, I kind of see myself as this conduit of information to share with nonprofits if they have questions like, "Hey, Victoria, I noticed this is going on. I saw this on the rendering. Like, can you tell me more?" Being able to answer as much as I can, and at the same time learning about them to see if there is a potential opportunity to work with them in a philanthropic way as it relates to the project. So it's too soon to say what that would be because I'm still learning. Mhm.
But yeah, I guess another kind of theme that I'm hearing is collaboration. So
Yeah.
whether it's philanthropy and government and corporate America and small
Mhm.
businesses and the different elements within each of those arenas, it's always
Yeah.
uh, open lines of communication, relationships, and
Right.
having a general awareness so that you can collaborate and be more effective because everybody has strengths and weaknesses, and
Yeah.
there are natural entities that
Mhm.
complement one another, so keeping your eye out
Absolutely.
for those is
Mhm.
always whatever, staying out of the
Yeah.
silo idea, and
Yes.
just
Very much.
having an open understanding and an open mind to what's going on.
Mhm. No, you definitely. I will always take a conversation with someone, like, they're especially if they say, "Victoria, you really gotta talk to this person, or you really gotta learn about this organization. There could be potential with the project or with this like, whatever." I'm like, "Sure." I'm all about connecting, and I'm all about, connecting and then connecting them to someone else if I'm not the fit, because it only helps the community, not just the project. It always helps the community to make these connections, especially if it's going to help resources and it's going to help your dollar, go much further. And to add to that, what you were saying earlier, corporate, government, all these things. I actually, very early on in the conversation, I talked about my capacity building and skill set. I also personally, this is kind of personally my mission is I want nonprofits to be ready. I want to prepare them for this project and or for anything that we may end up doing. And one thing I know from my work at 10C is nonprofits don't have time to think 3 years, 5 years down the road. So I feel like I'm kind of thinking for them and being that little push and nudge, like, "Hey, did you think about this?" Or, "Hey, are you working on this?" Or because I do know what's ahead of us, and I don't want to get there and then come to that nonprofit and they're not ready. So I really do. That's why I love my more of the organizational development side of what I do, the prepping and priming and coaching, because it they may not you may not understand it right now, but a year from now, 2 years from now, it's like you'll be ready. And that's the joy I get out of my job is being able to impart that wisdom and prepare people. Because I love nonprofit. I mean, I love the work that we do, and I believe nonprofits. If you want to know anything about a community, like just go talk to a nonprofit because they're the ones working with them. So
I want to echo two of your. I just want to, yeah. So two things that you said that struck me. One is meeting with anybody at any time, which always has its practical limits. But
yeah.
I agree with you from a stand up for kids perspective. I meet with government people, other nonprofits, individuals, corporate people. Uh,
Hmm.
and I think I can say 100% of the time, come away with something out of that meeting that I didn't know before, that
Right.
I can use, or there's a relationship there, or there's a piece of information that helps me
Yeah.
with whatever's next. So
Yep.
there's that piece. And I already forget what the second thing I was going to say was, but that's okay.
Oh.
Uh, so as we wrap up here,
Mhm.
what is if you wanted to have somebody walk away after listening to this podcast with one thing in regards to
Mhm.
philanthropy, what would you say?
I would say that it's not always what you assume. I think people hear philanthropy and it's really misconstrued. I feel like maybe in just in our today's society, it's very polarized right now what people know about philanthropy. Um, and I would say that the people who are so philanthropists, right, that are in philanthropy, there really is a good heart behind it. I know sometimes people think that, oh, it's just their own self-interest. Oh, it's just they're just giving where they only see a problem, and it does appear that way, but there is a lot more behind it than what I think people assume, and there really is always a good heart behind it, at least in my experience. Uh, I've learned so much in the almost 2 years that I've been with the family that I did not know, from how they give to the way that they give, but also to the administrative side of what happens when giving. Um, and philanthropy isn't the only answer, but it is something that can accelerate
Sure.
our work. It's definitely an accelerator because, like you said earlier, well, why isn't government just taking care of it? Well, I don't think we should only lean on government. I think true success and true collaboration is when all parties come together with the same mission and the same focus, and that focus being the community. Um, and philanthropy is it's really special. The more I get on this side of it, I was also like you, very like, well, how come they just get to decide? Or like you were saying, like, well, what is your impact? What is your focus? How do I know if I'm a good fit? How do I know if I'm wasting my time? Um, and it can be daunting. I understand that. And I guess I wouldn't know all this if I wasn't over on this side. So my little piece of wisdom is, um, educate yourself more on the process, before making conclusions, because I did that too. Um, and be curious about it. Don't just be like standoffish. It's either all horrible or all good. Like, be curious about philanthropy, because I think anyone can be a philanthropist, not just the wealthy. Um,
Yeah. And that is the one thing I wanted to add to what you said. It's
mhm.
big and small. So there are the big
Yeah,
Samuelis out there, but
yeah,
every individual can be a philanthropist.
definitely. And that's what we want to cultivate through our work in Anaheim, and which is why we're partner with Anaheim Community Foundation. We The other thing is, we can't solve all the problems. Um, like, yes, there's a lot of wealth out there, but even with all that wealth, it's one person still can't do it, because even if we tried, right, by putting all this money behind it, other people need to believe in it. So, to make it continue, right, in perpetuity. So, if you're curious about philanthropy, then learn about it, but also be a part of it. And you are a part of it the minute you give $5, the minute you give $25. You're a part of the process too. So really, I actually, I don't know who's listening, but really my other piece of wisdom is, get to know nonprofits. Get to know the nonprofits in your backyard. I'm always a big believer of, if I'm going to give small quantity, I'm going to give to a small nonprofit because they're going to appreciate and value it so much more than the big name $1 million nonprofits. Not that they're not bad. I mean, they're amazing too. But we can affect change in our own community if we learn about the nonprofits serving our community. And so if you're going to be a small philanthropist, then go on GuideStar and do a search and learn about the ones directly around you because they're the ones making your community safer. They're the ones giving kids a place to go after school. They're the ones giving, mom and dad, childcare, daycare at a discounted rate. Like they're the ones making your community safer and healthier.
Awesome. Cool. Well,
Yeah.
thanks, Victoria.
Thank
This is
you.
great. It's been really good to talk with you. Thanks for your time today
Yeah.
and take care.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Michael. Always awesome.
All right. Thank you for listening today to Listen Up, the Stand Up for Kids podcast. A big thank you to Gabby Villarreal and Billy Wynn for their production and editing support. Find us on YouTube, Spotify, Google Play, iTunes, and wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to support Stand Up for Kids, please share this podcast with family, friends, and colleagues. Also, check out our website at standupforkids.org/Orange County, and you can email me directly at michaelo@standupforkids.org to learn more. Please also consider a donation to help getting kids off the streets. 92 cents out of every dollar donated goes directly to supporting these kids. I'm your host, Michael Olson, Director of Development at Stand Up for Kids, Orange County. Thanks for listening and have a great day.